When the world is loud, your inner voice becomes a whisper, and most people spend their entire lives silencing that whisper because it doesn't sound safe, because it doesn't sound practical, because it doesn't sound like what teachers taught them or what society rewards. Logic says, follow the system, follow the blueprint, follow the rules that already exist. Logic says, stay in the lane, color inside the lines, don't ask questions that make people uncomfortable. But every breakthrough in history was born the moment someone decided to listen to something deeper than logic, something raw, something instinctive, something that couldn't be proven on paper, yet felt undeniable in the soul. Your inner voice doesn't come with guarantees. It doesn't show you the full staircase. It only shows you the next step. And that's why most people don't trust it. They want the whole plan before they move. They want certainty before commitment. They want applause before action. But intuition doesn't work like that. Intuition whispers first and explains later. It asks you to move before you understand. It demands courage before clarity. And if you wait for logic to approve your calling, you'll die with potential still trapped inside you. Steve Jobs said you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. But what he didn't say out loud is how terrifying it feels when those dots look random, when your life looks messy, when your decisions don't make sense to the people watching you. Trusting your inner voice means being misunderstood. It means being questioned. It means people calling you unrealistic, foolish, irresponsible. It means walking away from paths that look secure and stepping into uncertainty with nothing but belief holding you up. And belief is heavy when you carry it alone. Most people confuse logic with wisdom. Logic is based on what already exists. Logic studies the past and tries to repeat it. But your purpose was never meant to be a copy of someone else's past. Your inner voice is connected to possibility, not probability. Probability says what usually happens. Possibility says what could happen if you show up fully, if you commit, if you refuse to quit when things get uncomfortable. Logic will always argue for safety. Your inner voice argues for meaning. There will be moments when your inner voice contradicts everything you've been taught. Moments when the numbers don't add up. Moments when the timing looks wrong. Moments when the risk feels too big. And in those moments, logic will list all the reasons you should stop. It will remind you of your limitations. It will bring up your past failures. It will replay your worst mistakes. But your inner voice doesn't speak in fear. It speaks in alignment. It asks one simple question: is this who you were born to be? The people who change the world don't ignore logic completely, but they don't worship it either. They understand that logic is a tool, not a master. They use logic to build, but intuition to decide where to build. They use logic to refine, but intuition to begin. Because every great creation starts irrational. Every vision looks crazy before it looks obvious. Every innovation sounds impossible before it becomes normal. Trusting your inner voice requires solitude. You can't hear it clearly when you're constantly consuming other people's opinions. You can't hear it when you're addicted to validation. You can't hear it when you're scrolling, comparing, copying, chasing approval. Silence is uncomfortable because silence forces you to face yourself. And many people avoid silence because they're afraid of what they might hear, afraid that their inner voice will demand more from them than they're willing to give. Your inner voice will call you higher than your comfort zone. It will push you beyond your habits. It will challenge your excuses. It won't always tell you what you want to hear, but it will always tell you what you need to hear. It will tell you to leave places that no longer fit you. It will tell you to outgrow relationships that keep you small. It will tell you to start before you feel ready. And if you ignore it long enough, it doesn't disappear. It just gets louder in the form of regret. Most people don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because they betray themselves too many times. They silence their intuition to please others. They choose comfort over calling. They follow logic straight into a life they don't love. And then one day they wake up wondering how they got so far from who they once dreamed of becoming. That's the cost of not trusting your inner voice. It doesn't show up immediately. It shows up slowly, quietly, in dissatisfaction, in emptiness, in that feeling that something is missing, even when everything looks fine on the outside. Your inner voice is not random. It's shaped by your experiences, your pain, your curiosity, your obsessions, your questions. It's the place where everything you've lived comes together and points you forward. It's why certain ideas won't leave you alone. It's why some paths excite you while others drain you. It's why you feel restless doing what everyone else calls success. That restlessness is not a flaw. It's a signal when logic fails you, when plans fall apart, when doors close unexpectedly. Your inner voice becomes your anchor. It reminds you that setbacks are not signs to stop, but signs to adjust. It reminds you that rejection is not a verdict on your worth, but a redirection towards something more aligned. Logic might tell you that failure defines you. Your inner voice tells you that failure is feedback. Trusting your inner voice doesn't mean you won't feel fear. It means you won't let fear decide. Courage is not the absence of doubt. Courage is moving forward while doubt is screaming in your ear. Every time you choose your inner voice over external approval, you strengthen it. Every time you act on it, it becomes clearer. Confidence doesn't come before action. Confidence is built through action. The world rewards people who follow instructions, but it remembers people who follow intuition. The system is designed to produce workers, not visionaries, to fit in, not to stand out, to repeat, not to reinvent. If you're waiting for permission to trust yourself, it's never coming. No one is going to hand you a certificate that says you're allowed to believe in your own ideas. Your inner voice is not loud, flashy, or dramatic. It's steady. It's persistent. It shows up in quiet moments, late nights, early mornings, when no one is watching. And the more you listen to it, the more it demands honesty. Honesty about who you are. Honesty about what you want. Honesty about what you're willing to sacrifice to live a life that actually feels like yours. Getting fired feels like betrayal. It feels like the ground disappearing under your feet. It feels like the world pointing at you and saying you're not good enough. You're not needed. You're replaceable. Especially when the thing you're fired from is the very thing you helped build, the dream you poured your nights into, the vision you bled for. In that moment, it's not just a job you lose, it's identity, confidence, direction. You start questioning your value. You start replaying every decision. You start wondering if the people who doubted you were right all along. But getting fired has a strange power. It strips away illusion. It removes the comfort that was slowly turning into a cage. Sometimes success becomes a trap because it convinces you to stay where you stop growing. You get comfortable. You get predictable. You start protecting what you have instead of chasing what you're capable of. Getting fired shatters that protection. It forces you back into uncertainty. And uncertainty is painful, but it's also where creation lives. Steve Jobs didn't just lose a position. He lost control of his own creation. Imagine being told you don't belong in the company you imagined before it existed. That kind of rejection cuts deep. But rejection has a way of clarifying what approval never could. When you're no longer trying to please the boardroom, the crowd, the critics, you start hearing yourself again. You start remembering why you began in the first place. Passion doesn't die when you get fired. It gets buried under bitterness, under fear, under ego. And once those layers are stripped away, passion resurfaces stronger and more focused. Most people treat getting fired as a full stop, as proof that they should play smaller, as confirmation that they reached too far. But history treats it as a comma, a pause, a transition, a moment where the story changes tone but not direction. Being fired doesn't mean you failed. It means the environment you were in could no longer contain the version of you that was trying to emerge. Sometimes you have to be pushed out because you would never willingly walk away from what feels familiar. There is a difference between being rejected and being redirected. Rejection says you're not enough. Redirection says this isn't the place. But pain blurs that distinction. Pain makes everything personal. Pain convinces you that one moment defines your entire future. And if you're not careful, you'll let a temporary setback rewrite your permanent belief about yourself. Getting fired tests whether your confidence was rooted in your position or in your purpose. When the title is gone, when the paycheck stops, when the applause fades, what's left is you, your ideas, your skills, your hunger, your discipline. And that's when the real work begins. Because now you're forced to build without validation, forced to create without permission, forced to rely on your internal drive instead of external recognition. That's uncomfortable for people who are fueled by status. But it's freeing for people who are fueled by vision. Being fired humbles you, but humility is not weakness. Humility clears your vision. It reminds you that you are not your past wins. It reminds you that growth requires beginner's mind. Steve Jobs went on to create again, but this time with more patience, more depth, more understanding of people, of storytelling, of simplicity. The failure didn't erase his talent. It refined it. It removed the rough edges that success hadn't addressed yet. Most people never get a second chapter because they're too busy defending the first one. They spend years trying to prove that the people who let them go were wrong. Instead of focusing on becoming so aligned with their purpose, that proof becomes unnecessary. Getting fired gives you a rare opportunity to rebuild without ego, to ask yourself honest questions. What do I actually want to create? What kind of impact do I want to have? What kind of life do I want to live? And those questions are dangerous because once you answer them truthfully, you can't go back to pretending. There is grief in being fired. Grief for the version of life you imagined. Grief for the future you thought was guaranteed. And grief needs to be felt, not rushed. But grief should not turn into bitterness. Bitterness poisons creativity. It keeps you stuck in the past, replaying what happened instead of preparing for what's next. Acceptance doesn't mean approval. It means understanding that this moment is part of a larger process you can't fully see yet. Getting fired also reveals who you are when things fall apart. It shows you whether your discipline was real or situational, whether your work ethic depended on supervision or self-respect, whether your belief in yourself was conditional or rooted. Because when no one is watching, when no one is waiting for results, that's when character shows up or disappears. The beginning that follows being fired is usually quiet. No spotlight, no headlines, just long hours, small steps, and invisible progress. It's easy to quit in this phase because it doesn't feel like a comeback yet. It just feels like starting over. But starting over is not starting from zero. You start with experience, with lessons, with scars that taught you what not to do, with clarity you didn't have before. Sometimes the greatest gift of being fired is that it gives you back ownership of your time and energy. It allows you to build something that actually reflects who you are now, not who you were when you first started. People evolve, vision evolves, and clinging to old structures can suffocate new ideas. Getting fired breaks the structure so the idea can breathe. The world celebrates comebacks, but it doesn't talk enough about the loneliness before them, the self-doubt, the nights of questioning, the mornings of forcing yourself to believe again. That's where growth happens, not in the applause, but in the silence, not in the praise, but in the persistence. If you let it, getting fired can sharpen your focus. It can teach you what matters. It can strip away distractions. It can remind you that your worth was never tied to a position, a company, or a title. It was always tied to your ability to create, to adapt, to keep moving forward, even when the path disappears. Your work is never just what you do with your hands. It is what you do with your heart, with your attention, with your standards. Long before anyone sees the final product, your work is shaped by the way you think when no one is watching, by the care you put into the smallest details, by the pride you take in doing something well, even when there is no immediate reward. Work is not just a means of survival. It is a mirror. It reflects who you are, what you value, and how seriously you take your own potential. When you create something, you leave fingerprints on it that go beyond skill. You leave intention, you leave belief, you leave identity. That's why two people can do the same job with the same tools and produce completely different results. One is just completing a task. The other is expressing themselves. One is chasing a paycheck. The other is building a legacy. The difference is not talent. The difference is connection. When your work is connected to your soul, it carries weight. It carries energy. People can feel it, even if they can't explain it. Steve Jobs understood that excellence is not accidental. It is the result of obsession, of caring deeply about things most people overlook. He wasn't just designing products. He was communicating values, simplicity, beauty, intuition, respect for the user. That level of care doesn't come from chasing trends. It comes from alignment. When your work reflects your soul, you don't ask what the market wants first. You ask what feels true. You build from authenticity, and authenticity has a gravity that attracts the right people. Most people separate who they are from what they do. They put on a mask at work. They shrink their ideas to fit expectations. They lower their standards to avoid conflict. And over time, that separation creates exhaustion because pretending is tiring. Doing work that doesn't represent you slowly drains your energy. You start dreading the thing that takes up most of your life. Not because you're lazy, but because your soul is disconnected from your effort. When your work is aligned with your soul, discipline becomes easier. Not easy, but easier. You still get tired. You still struggle, but the struggle has meaning. You're willing to push through resistance because you believe in what you're building. You're willing to refine, to redo, to start over because the work feels personal. It's not just about success. It's about integrity. It's about being able to stand behind what you create without apology. There is a difference between being busy and being purposeful. Busy work fills time. Purposeful work fills you. One leaves you depleted. The other leaves you fulfilled, even when it's hard. And fulfillment doesn't come from praise. It comes from knowing that you gave your best, that you didn't cut corners, that you didn't settle. E for average, when you knew you were capable of more. Your soul has standards. It knows when you're cheating it. It knows when you're playing small. That quiet discomfort you feel when you rush something, when you compromise quality, when you ignore your own vision, that's not stress, that's misalignment. And misalignment always costs you in the long run. It costs motivation. It costs confidence. It costs pride in your own work. People often ask how to find passion in what they do, but passion is not something you find. It's something you bring. It's the energy you invest. It's the care you choose to apply. Even work that starts as a necessity can become meaningful if you approach it with craftsmanship. Craftsmanship is not about perfection. It's about respect. Respect for the process. Respect for the people who will experience your work. Respect for yourself. When your work reflects your soul, you stop chasing validation. You still appreciate recognition, but you don't depend on it. Because your primary approval comes from within. You know whether you did your best. You know whether you honored your standards. That internal compass is powerful. It keeps you grounded when praise comes and resilient when criticism shows up. The world tries to reduce work to output and profit. But the deeper truth is that work shapes identity. You become what you repeatedly do. If you repeatedly create carelessly, you become careless. If you repeatedly compromise, you become comfortable with less than your best. But if you repeatedly pour intention into your work, you build confidence. You build self-respect. You build a reputation that doesn't need advertising. Great work is often invisible at first. The hours of thinking, the revisions no one sees, the failures that teach you what doesn't work. When your soul is invested, you're patient with this process. You understand that mastery is not rushed. That depth takes time. That real impact is built slowly, layer by layer. And that patience shows in the final result. Your work also teaches others how to treat you. When you treat your work casually, people treat you casually. When you treat your work with seriousness and pride, people feel that. They sense boundaries. They sense quality. They sense that you are not just going through the motions. That energy commands respect without demanding it. There will be pressure to dilute your work, to make it easier, cheaper, faster, to follow what's popular instead of what's meaningful. And sometimes compromise is practical. But when compromise becomes a habit, your work loses its voice. It becomes noise, and noise is forgettable. Work that comes from the soul may not please everyone, but it resonates deeply with the right people. Your soul is not interested in shortcuts. It's interested in growth. It's interested in honesty. It's interested in expression. When you allow your work to reflect that, you turn effort into art, even in ordinary tasks. You bring presence into what you do, and presence transforms outcomes. At the end of the day, your work is one of the loudest statements you make about who you are. Long after words fade, what you create remains. It tells a story about your values, your courage, your willingness to care. And every day, with every task, you are writing that story through the way you choose to show up and create. Most people want life to make sense before they move. They want clarity before commitment. They want guarantees before effort. They want to see the full picture before taking the first step. But life doesn't work like that. Purpose doesn't reveal itself in advance. Meaning is not handed to you up front. The dots only connect looking backward, never forward. And if you wait to understand everything before you act, you'll stay exactly where you are, frozen by analysis, trapped by hesitation, watching time pass while potential rusts. Steve Jobs talked about connecting the dots, but what made that idea powerful was not reflection, it was movement. He didn't sit still waiting for the dots to line up. He trusted that motion itself would create meaning, that every class, every failure, every strange detour would matter later, even if it felt useless in the moment. Forward movement is an act of faith. It's saying, I don't know how this will work out, but I'm willing to find out by stepping into it. Most people underestimate how much clarity comes from action. They believe thinking will save them from mistakes, but thinking too long only multiplies fear. Action exposes truth. Action gives feedback. Action sharpens direction. You don't find your path by standing still and staring at the ground. You find it by walking, adjusting, stumbling, learning. Motion creates alignment. Stillness creates doubt. There will always be gaps in your understanding, always missing pieces, always unanswered questions. And those gaps are not signs to stop. They are invitations to trust yourself. The mind wants order. The soul understands process. Growth is nonlinear. Progress looks messy when you're inside it. Only later does it appear intentional. Only later does it look like a straight line. If you wait until you feel ready, you'll never begin. Readiness is not a feeling, it's a decision. Confidence doesn't come before movement. Confidence is built through movement. Every step you take without full certainty strengthens your ability to trust yourself. Every risk you survive expands your tolerance for the unknown. The people who move first don't have more clarity, they have more courage. Connecting the dots later means accepting that some seasons of your life will feel pointless. You'll take jobs that don't make sense. You'll learn skills you don't immediately use. You'll meet people who disappear from your life but leave behind lessons that shape you. In the moment, it feels random. In the moment, it feels inefficient, but nothing is wasted when you're moving with intention. Staying still feels safe, but it's the most dangerous choice of all because stagnation slowly convinces you that comfort is enough, that curiosity is risky, that ambition should be quiet. Over time, you don't just lose opportunities, you lose belief in your ability to adapt. Movement keeps you alive. It keeps you flexible. It keeps you learning. The need to understand everything before acting is often disguised fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of choosing wrong. But there is no perfect path. Every path includes loss. Every decision closes some doors. Waiting doesn't protect you from regret. It creates a different kind of regret. The regret of not trying, of never knowing what could have been. When you move without full clarity, you develop something more valuable than a plan. You develop resilience. You learn how to pivot. You learn how to read signals. You learn how to trust your instincts. Life becomes less about controlling outcomes and more about responding with intelligence and courage. The dots don't connect because you think hard enough. They connect because you lived enough, because you showed up enough times, because you stayed curious, because you didn't quit when the story stopped making sense. Meaning is built through experience, not speculation. Every chapter of your life prepares you for a future version of yourself you can't see yet. The frustration you feel now is shaping patience. The confusion is sharpening discernment. The uncertainty is building faith in your own adaptability. But only if you keep moving, only if you stay engaged. There will be voices telling you to wait, to be practical, to be realistic, to stick to what's proven. And those voices are not evil. They're just afraid of uncertainty, afraid of standing out, afraid of being wrong. But nothing extraordinary is built from fear disguised as logic. Moving now doesn't mean being reckless. It means being brave enough to start, brave enough to accept that mistakes are part of the curriculum. Brave enough to trust that learning happens on the road, not before it. You don't need the whole map. You need the courage to take the next step. When you look back one day, the moments that felt like detours will make sense. The skills you thought were unrelated will connect. The failures you wished away will reveal their value. But that future understanding depends on present movement. You can't connect dots you never created. Life rewards momentum. It responds to effort. Doors open for people who are already walking, not for people standing still waiting for permission. The universe meets you in motion, not in hesitation. You are not behind. You are not lost. You are in process. But process only works if you participate, if you keep moving even when clarity is incomplete, if you trust that action will teach you what thinking never could. If you accept that understanding comes later and growth happens now. Most people spend their lives pretending they have unlimited time. They talk about one day, someday, later, after things slow down, after they feel ready, after the timing is right. They delay their dreams as if life is a rehearsal, as if there will be a perfect moment when fear disappears and confidence shows up fully formed. But the truth that most people avoid is that time is not waiting. Every day that passes is a day you never get back. And once you truly understand that, the way you live changes. Steve Jobs spoke openly about death, not to scare people, but to wake them up. Death is not just an ending. It is a clarifier. It cuts through excuses. It exposes what actually matters. When you remember that your time is limited, trivial fears lose their power. The need to impress others fades. The pressure to follow someone else's script weakens. Death strips life down to its essentials and asks a simple question: are you living in a way that feels true to you? Most people are controlled by the fear of losing something, losing approval, losing security, losing comfort. But the greatest loss is losing time while doing something that drains your spirit. When you accept that death is inevitable, you stop wasting energy on things that don't align with your values. You stop saying yes out of guilt. You stop shrinking to fit expectations that were never designed for you. You begin to choose with intention. The awareness of death brings urgency, but not panic. It brings focus. It reminds you that your energy is precious, that your attention is valuable, that every commitment is a trade. And when you realize that, you become more selective. You invest in what matters. You protect your time. You stop postponing the life you actually want to live. Most people confuse being busy with being alive. They fill their days with tasks and distractions to avoid deeper questions. But when you sit with the reality of death, distractions lose their grip. You realize that achievements without meaning feel empty, that success without fulfillment feels hollow, that life is not measured by how long you live, but by how fully you live. Thinking about death also exposes how much fear controls your decisions. Fear of being judged, fear of failing publicly, fear of disappointing others. But when you imagine yourself at the end of your life, looking back, those fears seem small. What remains is regret for chances not taken, words not spoken, risks avoided. Death doesn't make you reckless. It makes you honest. The awareness that life ends forces you to confront how you're spending your days right now, not in the future, not when conditions improve, now. It challenges you to ask whether your daily actions reflect your deepest values or just your habits. It asks whether you're living by design or by default. Death also removes the illusion of control. It reminds you that no amount of planning can guarantee outcomes, that life is fragile, that certainty is an illusion. And once you accept that, you become more courageous. You stop waiting for perfect conditions. You stop trying to control every variable. You focus on showing up fully in the present moment. There is a strange freedom in accepting mortality. It frees you from the need to be perfect, from the pressure to get everything right, from the fear of making mistakes, because mistakes are part of being human, and being human is temporary. When you remember that, you become more compassionate with yourself. You allow yourself to grow. Most people live as if they will correct their course later, as if there will always be time to change. But change becomes harder the longer you delay. Habits deepen. Fear strengthens. Comfort becomes addictive. The awareness of death breaks that pattern. It creates a sense of now or never, not in a dramatic way, but in a grounded, intentional way. Death also highlights the importance of contribution. You start thinking less about what you can get and more about what you can give, about the impact you leave behind, about the people you help, about the ideas you share, because material things lose their meaning when measured against time. What lasts is influence. What lasts is how you made people feel. Living with the awareness of death doesn't mean being morbid. It means being present. It means listening more closely, loving more openly, working on things that matter to you, not just things that pay the bills. It means aligning your actions with your values instead of your fears. When you stop pretending you have forever, you start treating each day with respect. You stop numbing yourself with distractions. You stop procrastinating on what scares you but matters most. You stop postponing joy. You start living deliberately. Death doesn't motivate you by threatening you. It motivates you by reminding you that this is it, this moment, this chance, this life. And when that truth sinks in, excuses lose their strength, fear loses its authority, and you begin to live with clarity, urgency, and purpose that no external motivation could ever give. Staying hungry is not about never being satisfied. It's about never becoming numb. It's about refusing to let comfort dull your edge or success silence your curiosity. Hunger is the drive that wakes you up before the alarm, that keeps you thinking when others are sleeping, that pushes you to ask better questions instead of settling for easy answers. The moment you lose that hunger, you stop growing. You start protecting what you have instead of pursuing what you're capable of becoming. Most people think hunger disappears when you succeed, but real hunger evolves. It shifts from survival to mastery, from proving yourself to improving yourself, from chasing validation to chasing excellence. Staying hungry means you never let your past wins define your future limits. It means you don't let applause make you lazy or criticism make you bitter. You stay focused on the work, on the process, on becoming better than you were yesterday. Staying foolish is misunderstood. People hear the word foolish and think reckless, careless, irresponsible. But foolishness in this sense is courage without consensus. It's the willingness to look stupid before you look smart. It's choosing curiosity over caution, experimentation over perfection. Every breakthrough begins as an idea that seems foolish to people who are comfortable with the way things are. The world rewards predictability, but progress is built by people who question it. Staying foolish means you don't kill ideas too early just because they don't fit existing models. You allow yourself to explore, to try, to fail without letting failure harden you. You understand that mistakes are not proof of incompetence, but evidence of effort. Most people lose their foolishness as they grow older because they confuse maturity with conformity. They trade imagination for security. They trade exploration for explanation. They stop asking why and start saying that's just how it is. Staying foolish means protecting. Your sense of wonder in a world that encourages cynicism. It means believing that better is possible even when evidence is limited. Staying relentless is what ties hunger and foolishness together. Relentlessness is discipline when motivation fades. It's showing up when excitement is gone. It's continuing when progress is slow and feedback is quiet. Anyone can be hungry at the beginning. Anyone can be foolish when the risk feels small. But relentlessness is what carries you through the long middle, where dreams are tested and commitment is exposed. Relentless people don't wait for perfect conditions. They adapt, they adjust, they keep moving. They understand that consistency beats intensity over time, that small actions repeated daily compound into massive results. Relentlessness is not loud, it's quiet, patient, and stubborn. There will be moments when staying hungry feels exhausting, when staying foolish feels embarrassing, when staying relentless feels lonely. Moments when you question whether it's worth it. Moments when it would be easier to settle, to blend in, to stop pushing. And those moments are the price of growth. Growth is uncomfortable by design. If it were comfortable, everyone would do it. The danger is not failure. The danger is comfort. Comfort convinces you that you've arrived, that there's nothing left to learn, that effort is optional. Comfort slowly erodes hunger. It makes foolish ideas seem unnecessary. It weakens relentlessness. And once comfort takes over, decline begins quietly. Staying hungry means constantly learning, reading, listening, observing, being willing to be a beginner again and again. It means surrounding yourself with people who challenge you instead of people who only affirm you. It means seeking feedback even when it's uncomfortable. Hunger keeps you humble. It reminds you that there is always another level. Staying foolish means trusting intuition over approval. It means allowing yourself to pursue ideas that excite you even if they don't make sense to others yet. It means remembering that every innovation was once laughed at. Foolishness is the birthplace of originality. Without it, everything becomes a copy of a copy. Staying relentless means building systems, not relying on feelings. It means creating habits that carry you forward when motivation disappears. It means committing to the process even when the outcome is uncertain. Relentlessness is not about force. It's about persistence, about showing up consistently over a long period of time. The combination of hunger, foolishness, and relentlessness creates momentum. Momentum creates confidence. Confidence creates clarity. But it all starts with a decision to not settle, to not coast, to not let life happen to you instead of through you. Most people wait for inspiration. Relentless people create it through action. Most people wait to feel ready. Hungry people start anyway. Most people fear looking foolish. Foolish people understand that looking foolish is often the first step to doing something meaningful. As you move forward, success will try to soften you. Failure will try to harden you. Staying hungry keeps you sharp. Staying foolish keeps you open. Staying relentless keeps you moving. Together, they form a mindset that resists stagnation and invites growth. The world doesn't need more people who play it safe. It needs people who care deeply, think differently, and refuse to quit. People who are willing to be uncomfortable in pursuit of something meaningful. People who understand that fulfillment is not found in arrival, but in continual becoming. When you choose to stay hungry, stay foolish, and stay relentless, you choose a life of intention over convenience. You choose growth over comfort. You choose purpose over fear. And that choice, repeated daily, shapes not just what you achieve, but who you become.